Episode 1, titled The Crawl, kicks off with a brief flash that takes us back to November 12, 1983. There, we witness the unsettling landscape of the Upside Down, and amidst that shadowy world, Will's makeshift castle. The boy appears, singing softly to calm his own fear, until the presence of the Demogorgon forces him to flee from his tiny hideout. He jumps from one tree to another, desperate to escape the fierce creature, but loses his balance, gets caught on a branch, and finally falls to the ground. In that moment, the Demogorgon drags him mercilessly to Vecna, who seizes him with his tentacles. Vecna tells Will that the time has come to begin. As those tentacles slip into his mouth, and a viscous liquid flows inside. With unnerving calm, he assures him that together they will do many beautiful things. Back in the present, we see Holly, who notices a mysterious shadow from her yard. Curious, she approaches the window and greets it innocently, but she is immediately interrupted by her mother, Karen Wheeler, who asks her to gather the whole gang for breakfast. Holly obeys and quickly calls everyone. The Byers, who are temporarily living with the Wheelers after the events of the previous season, join the breakfast table. With so many people together, the meal turns into a genuine commotion, something that visibly irritates Ted, already tired of the morning chaos. When everyone finishes and leaves, Ted and Karen are left alone. He sighs in resignation, already wishing the Byers would head out. Meanwhile, we see Robin and Steve, who are now hosting a radio show. Robin talks on the program about the surprising ratio of military personnel to civilians, and the recent requirement for all citizens to undergo medical exams, since after inhaling those snowflakes, no one can be completely sure of their health. She also discusses the event from the previous season finale, when the Earth opened with massive cracks in Hawkins. The holes in the ground have been covered with large metal plates, which the kids use as slides, much to the annoyance of the military. Robin advises listeners to stay clear of the military-controlled area known as Mac Z, and at the same time gives us a brief look at the upside-down rift that remains there. Shortly after, Robin mentions she has a date with Vicky and dedicates a song to her on air. We see Vicky listening to her until suddenly the broadcast begins to experience interference. Steve scolds Robin and tells her that this is happening because she's mocking the army. Worried, he calls Dustin to let him know they have a problem at the Squawk. The signal has started behaving erratically. He thinks it might be Robin's comments causing it, but Dustin corrects him and explains that it's probably the remote radio unit. He also suggests that Steve check the manual, reminding him that it won't always solve his problems. At school, Andy confronts Dustin for wearing a Club Hellfire t-shirt. He tells Dustin that the club is over while starting to tear the shirt. Fortunately, Lucas arrives, whom Andy calls a traitor. Lucas threatens Andy in case he touches Dustin again. Will and Mike also show up to defend him, and when Andy and his friend leave, Lucas tells Dustin to stop provoking them by wearing that shirt. Dustin makes it clear that he isn't like them, since apparently they have moved on from grieving Eddie while he has not. Mike comments that Eddie would want them to find and stop Vecna. They try to convince Dustin to keep a low profile and blend in a little more, but he refuses and storms off, reminding them that they have always stayed true to themselves no matter the cost, never following rules because they owe loyalty to their friends and have always stood up for what is right. Then we see Eleven running through the woods while being chased by military personnel until they finally shoot and catch her. However, we discover that it is not Eleven, but another woman. Later, we see the real Eleven training and using her powers to blow up pumpkin heads while Hopper and Joyce time her, setting a new record. Joyce suggests she shouldn't be so hard on herself, while Hopper thinks it's better to celebrate that achievement with waffles, but Eleven insists she can go faster and continues training. Next, we see Murray arriving in Hawkins in a truck, posing as a military supply delivery driver. Meanwhile, at Squawk, Jonathan, Nancy, Steve, and Robin are trying to fix the radio interference problem. Then they head to the transmission antenna and discuss that someone will have to climb up. Steve is the first to volunteer, although Jonathan also wants to do it. Jonathan gets ahead of Steve and both climb up, turning it into a race to see who goes faster. In the end, they arrive at the same time and manage to solve the problem. At that moment, Murray shows up in the truck to deliver supplies to Nancy and Robin. He gives them bullets, grenades, and some gifts for Steve and Jonathan. He tells them that today there will be a fire set by the army and suggests that maybe tonight will finally be the night they find Vecna and put an end to everything. Meanwhile, at school, Dustin takes a snake out of the classroom, while Lucas, Will, and Mike comment that Dustin has gone crazy since he wants to reactivate Hellfire and find the lost sheep. Dustin catches a piece of the conversation, and the guys just tell him they were talking about Andy, who has gone completely nuts. Finally, the radio show goes back to running normally, and Robin takes the chance to broadcast a coded message meant for the group, telling them the exact time and place where they should meet to carry out a strategic tracking. Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, and Robin go over their plan carefully, while Dustin, Will, Lucas, and Mike review theirs, making sure all details are covered. Steve suggests with some skepticism that maybe Vecna has already been defeated, but Jonathan reminds him of Nancy's terrifying vision, Hawkins engulfed in flames and all its inhabitants dead. The gravity of the situation strengthens everyone's determination to face Vecna and finish him once and for all. Suddenly, Will goes into a trance. The guys notice it immediately. Will explains that he only felt a very strong force and that the sky seemed to spin, though for the moment he doesn't give it much importance. Meanwhile, we see Holly at school, who notices someone in the distance, approaches to greet them, and has a brief conversation with him. However, Holly's teacher watches her talk but doesn't see anyone else in the scene. To everyone else, Holly seems completely alone, since only she can see her mysterious companion. On the other hand, in the military lab, Dr. K leads the operation and tells Sergeant Ramirez that she needs the girl present, referring to 11. Meanwhile, 11 insists on continuing her training to increase her speed and skills, aware that today is the mission. She wants to accompany Hopper, since she is looking to find Henry, but Hopper doesn't allow it, telling her to do it from the bathtub. Later, it is revealed that 11 had indeed managed to break the record, though Hopper insists on keeping her safe, aware that in all previous missions they have only found soldiers and that besides, everyone is actively looking for her. At school, Andy finds a snake in his locker, the same one Dustin had taken, and everyone makes fun of him for being scared, though it's only a corn snake. Shortly after, Andy discovers a message written on his locker that says, "Hellfire is still alive." Meanwhile, Mike goes to school to look for Holly. As they talk, the girl tells him about her mysterious and enigmatic friend, whose name is Mr. K. She explains to Mike that Mr. K protects her from the monsters lurking in Hawkins, creatures that seek to devour children like her. Mike, with a kind gesture, pulls out a personalized figure he made especially for Holly and suggests that next time she feels scared, she might only need to imagine Holly the heroic, a brave and powerful cleric able to open doors to any dimension. Lucas and Will are visiting Max, while Will explains that Mike suggests those strange sensations she's been feeling lately could mean that Vecna is closer than they imagine. Meanwhile, Dustin visits Eddie's grave, now covered in graffiti and improvised messages. When he touches one of the inscriptions, he discovers it's not paint but blood, and shortly after he finds remains of the snake he had hidden in Andy's locker at school. At that moment, Andy and his friends surround Dustin seeking revenge, but he just laughs and assures them he defeated Vecna's main acolyte using a prismatic spray. Then he takes the chemicals he brought to clean the grave and throws them at Andy and his friends. Still, they react by hitting him mercilessly. Andy warns him that Hellfire will die with him that very night. They throw him to the ground and continue attacking him, while Lucas tries to contact him insistently over the walkie-talkie, reminding him he had to reach the station immediately. Robin shows up at the station and says she just spoke with Dustin's mother, who also doesn't know where he could be. Finally, 11 arrives to join the group. Mike talks with 11 about Dustin, mentioning that today he had been strange, irritable, tense, and clearly scared. 11 mentions that Hopper has also acted unusually. Mike replies that maybe everything related to Vecna is affecting them all, and that more than ever they need a break. Perhaps, he adds, this is the last mission, especially because Will felt something. Maybe today the decisive moment will finally happen. They will find Vecna and everything will end. After that, he imagines that everyone could travel to a distant and peaceful land and start over from scratch. Their conversation is interrupted when Lucas calls Mike and 11 to join the rest of the group, who are already finishing preparations. At that moment, Steve receives a signal that at first is very faint, but then becomes stable. However, a problem arises. He cannot monitor the transmission while driving and needs Dustin to do it. Will offers to help, but Joyce dismisses the idea and decides to send Jonathan instead, making sure everything runs more safely. Jonathan heads out to help with the satellite and the two leave in the van. Mike and Lucas follow them on bikes to keep track. Hopper and Joyce arrive at the forest, where Hopper hides in a small makeshift bunker. Before closing the hatch, Joyce calmly asks him to try to come back. Meanwhile, Holly hears Karen talking to Ted about her concern over the girl's supposed imaginary friend, a comment that deeply saddens Holly, as she feels that no one believes in what is completely real to her. Then we see Hopper entering an underground tunnel. He reaches a staircase and begins to ascend cautiously. Upon exiting, he finds himself in what seems to be an abandoned building located near the military base. Meanwhile, Mike and Lucas watch from the library and see 4 trucks approaching the east gate of the facility. The flamethrowers head to the upside-down entrance, opening a gap big enough for the trucks to enter. Once the vehicles enter the camp, Hopper climbs onto the back of one of them. Moments later, the trucks receive the signal to move toward the upside-down base. After they pass, the gate closes permanently, sealing behind them. Jonathan picks up Hopper's signal from the radio van and tells Steve to move forward. Meanwhile, Nancy and the team begin tracking the van's movement using a map and a projector to follow the location precisely. The military vehicles collide on the road, and Jonathan orders Steve to stop the van. As they are about to lose the signal, he manages to recover it, but Hopper cannot communicate with Joyce by radio. When she finally responds, she explains that they had to stop abruptly. The soldiers know Hopper is there. While 11 looks worried, Will gets goosebumps and experiences a vision inside the Upside Down. A Demogorgon attacks attacks the soldiers while the vehicle Hopper is in starts moving and is chased by the creature. The Demogorgon leaps onto the van, scratching the top and knocking down the driver, who is thrown to the ground. The creature jumps again as the van crashes violently into a tree. Hopper manages to enter the forest to hide, while Will falls to the ground having a seizure. Later, we see the Demogorgon running toward the Wheeler house. After a few unconscious moments, Joyce manages to wake him up. Will explains, distressed, that he saw the Demogorgon and that it is coming for them, specifically referring to the Wheelers. At the Wheeler house, Ted entertains himself playing golf while Karen enjoys a glass of wine. In Holly's room, the little girl cries inconsolably in her bed. Suddenly, she notices that her lamp's light turns off and on intermittently. All the lights in the room begin to flicker in a disturbing way. The ceiling starts cracking slowly and, to her astonishment and fear, a portal to the Upside Down opens. From it emerges a Demogorgon, whose terrifying presence fills the room, leaving the little girl completely petrified with terror. We're back with Chapter 2, titled The Disappearance of Holly Wheeler. Holly was in her room when the Demogorgon burst in to snatch her. The creature managed to rip off one of her shoes, but the girl grabbed onto the bed and broke free, sprinting down the hallway in total panic until she reached the bathroom, where her mom was getting ready for bed with music playing. Between sobs, Holly swore there was a monster in the house. Her mom tried to calm her down, telling her it was just a nightmare. But the second she hugged her, she felt something wet on Holly's head and realized her hand was covered in blood. The light started flickering, proving the creature was crawling through the walls. Meanwhile, Mike and Nancy were rushing toward the house, already knowing where the creature was hiding. The Demogorgon smashed through the bathroom door looking for mother and daughter. They'd managed to hide, so the creature checked the closet first, then the shower. When it didn't find them, it crept toward the bathtub full of foam, guessing they might be in there. Right before it dipped its claws into the water, a neighbor, Nancy's father, walked in, alarmed by the flickering lights, holding a golf club. He called out for the family, instantly catching the Demogorgon's attention. The man tried to defend himself and swung at it, but the creature got to him first and threw him across the room. Mother and daughter tried to use the distraction to get out, but they ran right into the monster and rushed downstairs. Since the Demogorgon could pop up in different spots, it got ahead of them and appeared on the first floor. Holly's mom grabbed a wine bottle, smashed it, and used it to protect her daughter. She actually managed to cut the creature, making it bleed, but the thing struck back with those long arms, tearing into her right in front of Holly, who ended up covered in blood. That's when Nancy and Eleven showed up. Nancy covered the wounded woman with her coat and told Eleven to go after the creature, since it had shifted into another plane where Holly was calling out to her mom in total desperation. Both parents were rushed to the ER, with Mike, Lucas, and Nancy following close behind. The medical staff asked them to wait in the lobby. Still in shock, Nancy noticed her hands were soaked in blood, so she went to the bathroom and scrubbed them over and over. When she got back to the boys, she said all of this was their fault. Mike tried to calm her down, but she insisted they should have stopped the creature earlier. She said the woman who had shown her those visions had already warned her. Her parents dead, Hawkins destroyed, and now she feared Vecna was back to finish the job. Lucas said it wasn't some kind of punishment. He explained that Vecna never left loose ends, and if he really wanted to make them suffer, he wouldn't have left the parents alive. He asked why he'd take Holly without leaving a body, why he wouldn't show up himself, and why he'd send a creature like that. Mike asked if he was saying it wasn't Vecna. Lucas said he wasn't sure. He kept getting deja vus, feeling like everything was repeating what happened with Will. Even the dates matched. He reminded them it was November 3rd, and Will had been taken on the 6th. They had 3 days before everything could flip again. The group realized Eleven would be coming back with them, and that she was the only one who could actually help, so they decided to wait. Meanwhile, at the Wheeler house, a specialized team had arrived. Forensics and officers were analyzing the whole scene. The agent said the oldest daughter had found her mother badly injured after facing an intruder, but by the time she made it there, that intruder was already gone. The captain studied the marks on the door where the Demogorgon had opened the portal and ordered them to check the recordings from nearby houses, since he clearly had an idea of what had happened. In the other plane, Eleven was desperately searching for Holly. She kept calling her name as she pushed forward through the darkness until she heard the crunch of leaves. She used her power in that direction and heard someone grunt. She'd shoved Hopper. Once she recognized him, she apologized. He reminded her she wasn't supposed to be there because of how dangerous it was. Eleven turned on her flashlight and spotted traces of Demogorgon blood, figuring Mrs. Wheeler had managed to injure it. She told Hopper she was looking for Holly, and once he realized how serious it was, he took off running right behind her. Over at Will's house, Joyce and Robin were trying to fix the power after it blew from another one of Will's visions. Will was shaken, so Joyce sat down and asked him what he felt. He admitted it didn't feel like a vision at all. It felt real, like he was one of the Demogorgons, and he didn't understand why the creature had gone after the Wheelers, or why it picked Holly specifically. He said he still felt connected to the hive mind even though he was supposedly cut off. Ever since he was taken the first time, he never felt fully like himself again. When the portal opened that summer, he sensed it instantly, but after moving to California, the feeling went away. Still, the moment he returned to Hawkins, it came back, stronger each time. Robin came back with the fuses and suggested that Will was basically acting like some kind of human antenna, picking up signals from the Mind Flayer's particles like radio waves. When he was close, the signal came in clear. When he was far, it was all static. That's when Will got the idea to use that connection to find Holly. He remembered a vision near the woods by the school and suggested that maybe he'd been seeing through the Demogorgon's eyes. If he went back there, maybe he could reconnect to the hive mind signal. Joyce shut that down immediately, reminding him Vecna had almost killed him. Will insisted Holly was alone and terrified, just like he'd been, and he wasn't going to let her die. He said wasting time swapping fuses was pointless, but Joyce told him they were trying to reach Hopper, who could talk to Eleven and pass everything along. Somewhere else, Jonathan and Steve were jumping the van's battery using a woman's car. While they waited, Steve suggested stopping by Nancy's place to check on her and her parents, but Jonathan said they needed to stick to the plan, find the G1 zone, and establish contact with Hopper, Eleven, and Holly. Steve said they could at least drop off flowers at the hospital, which set Jonathan off. He accused Steve of always trying to get Nancy's attention. Steve fired back that he was just worried about a friend. But ever since Jonathan came back from California, he'd been all over the place and dragging Nancy down with him. As they argued, they spotted Dustin stumbling toward them, seriously injured, dragging his bike behind him. In the other plane, Hopper and Eleven kept searching. He asked her how she'd even gotten to the Wheeler house. Eleven said Nancy had driven them there, which ticked him off. She wasn't supposed to expose herself like that. They could find her. He reminded her she couldn't use the tunnels or go out without making sure it was safe first. He said it would have been better to show up in a car with a hat on than to crawl through mud. He insisted that if the military got images of her, they'd come after her with everything they had. Frustrated, Eleven said they needed to end all of this before that happened. She was convinced the Demogorgon would lead them straight to Vecna. Hopper asked how that made any sense, and she explained that while looking for Holly, she couldn't find Vecna either. It was like both of them were in some place her powers couldn't reach. That, she said, was probably where Holly was too. While Hopper kept warning her about how dangerous this was, Eleven found a bigger trail of Demogorgon blood, meaning the creature was slowing down for some reason. If they hurried, they could still catch up. At the hospital, Lucas was visiting Max and explaining the mess they were in. No one knew where Eleven, Hopper, or Holly were, and the whole team was falling apart. He told her he wished he had better news, but they needed everyone if they were going to face what was coming. He added that if she planned on waking up, now would be the perfect time, because he had a feeling the final fight was happening that same day. Down another hallway, Mike was grabbing coffee for himself and Nancy. As he passed through the kids' area, he noticed a book called A Wrinkle in Time, and it made something click in his head. Nancy walked up, annoyed that the doctor still wouldn't say when she could see her parents. Mike cut her off and asked if Holly had ever mentioned someone called Mr. What. Nancy remembered her imaginary friend. Mike explained that Holly said this man warned her about monsters in Hawkins and that they were coming for her, and that couldn't be a coincidence, not when the monster had taken her that same day. Nancy still didn't get what he meant. Mike suggested that maybe this guy wasn't imaginary at all, maybe he was real, but he admitted they didn't know who he was, they'd never seen him, and it made zero sense that someone worried about Holly wouldn't warn the family. Still, he said that if this man actually existed, he might be the one person who could tell them why Holly was taken and where she'd been taken. Nancy suggested distracting the doctors and the receptionist so she could sneak in and see her mom, since she was the only one who might know something about this mysterious Mr. What. Meanwhile, in the car on the way to the G1 zone, Steve was arguing with Dustin because he'd vanished during a critical moment and showed up beat up. Steve suspected Andy and his friends had jumped him. Jonathan asked them to keep quiet so he could try picking up a signal on the radio from the other side, but the two of them kept bickering anyway. Finally, Jonathan snapped and yelled at them to shut up. Trying to ease the tension, Dustin joked that they sounded like best friends. Steve said that in this case, he actually liked the idea. Back at the house, Joyce was still trying to get a signal with no luck until Robin noticed the flux capacitor light flickering again. She grabbed Will by the hand and pulled him aside, telling him the red light wasn't a big deal. In truth, she wanted to talk privately. She thought Joyce's plan was pointless. They'd scanned the G1 zone 5 times already, and even if they found Hopper, Holly was still missing. She suggested using the antenna in Will's head, his unintentional link to the hive mind. Her plan was to sync him with the signal from the interdimensional creature to locate Holly. She admitted Joyce would freak out and that it was dangerous, but everything they were doing was already dangerous anyway. Will, intrigued, agreed to help, and they got to work. Meanwhile, the military had already spotted Eleven in recent footage, even though she insisted she'd worn a hat to hide herself. Dr. K was notified that Eleven was in Hawkins, and the base started coordinating an operation to capture her. In the other plane, Hopper fell behind, pretending he'd cramped up, but Eleven realized he was seriously hurt when she lifted his shirt and jacket. They stopped on the side of the path so she could treat him before the Demogorgon got too far ahead. Still injured, Hopper found more drops of blood and said it showed a level of hostility that made no sense, something his girlfriend never took as seriously as she should have. While she patched patched him up, he told her with a heavy tone that his own father had once gotten so fed up with him that he ended up signing him into the army, thinking discipline would straighten him out. Hopper admitted he used to think he was smarter than his superiors, even when he wasn't, and that the war taught him how thin the line between bravery and stupidity really was. He'd watched too many brave people die, and it stayed with him. That made him think of his daughter, Sarah, the bravest person he'd ever known, because she faced death without fear. The doctors even believed she might make it. He realized then that the reason he treated Eleven so carefully was because he was terrified Vecna might beat him again, and take her from him too. Hopper admitted it openly. He didn't want to lose her, and he asked her to promise that no matter where the trail of blood led them, she'd listen to him. She shot back with a sarcastic comment about not acting like a stubborn pain in the ass, like him. Right then, they heard nearby growls and jumped to their feet. Hopper, already feeling a little better, took the lead. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Nancy and Mike managed to talk to the doctor in charge and begged him to let them see their mom, saying it was an emergency. He refused, explaining she'd just come out of surgery and her larynx was too damaged for her to wake up or speak. Once the doctor walked off, Nancy noticed the cleaning crew coming out of the elevator and grabbed Mike, dragging him into the service closet, determined to find another way in. Somewhere else, Jonathan thought he'd picked up a signal from Hopper, but Dustin checked the decoder and pointed out that if it were really him, it would have shown up on the device. They agreed it was just a false alarm. Then Nancy changed the subject and asked about the issue Robin had found with the radio. She asked if the receiver was hooked up to the flux capacitor since Robin had mentioned a problem with that part, the whole reason Will and she went to fix it. The others just stared at each other, confused, trying to figure out how any of that made sense. Meanwhile, Robin and Will had made it into the woods where they found a mandala made out of stones. Right there, Will got another vision of kids laughing and playing, which basically confirmed they were heading the right way. At the same time, Hopper and Eleven found one of Holly's shoes in front of this massive wall covered in a thick hive mind kind of tissue. A clear sign the girl had to be on the other side. Now the real challenge was figuring out how to get through it. Back at the hospital, Nancy and Mike changed clothes. He dressed up like a patient. She put on a nurse's outfit. As they walked down the hallway, they saw the doctor coming their way, and all they could do was hope he wouldn't recognize them. They managed to slip by unnoticed and finally made it into their mom's room. And to their shock, she was awake. She broke down crying the second she saw them. She tried to speak, but they begged her not to. Not in her condition. Nancy handed her a notepad and a pen so she could write instead. When they started asking questions, their mom said she had no idea who this Mr. Who was, but she did mention Holly's teacher had said the girl seemed to be talking to someone who wasn't actually there. By sunrise, Will and Robin had made it to the school and started checking the playground for whatever he'd seen in his vision. Will figured out that Vecna was tapped into the hive mind the same way he connected to the minds of his victims, so what Will was picking up wasn't his own, it was what Holly had seen. With growing panic, he realized that if he was feeling what Vecna felt, then in a way, he was turning into him. Back in the hospital room, Nancy kept questioning their mom. If she didn't know who he was, she could at least describe what he looked like. She did so perfectly, and when they asked if Holly had mentioned any other name, she slowly wrote down Henry. She explained that this man had taken Holly out of school and brought her to a house, telling her she'd be safe there. When the girl asked if he'd also help her friends and her family, he told her he'd save her friends first, and then of course her family. And that's how this chapter ends. This story continues with Chapter 3 titled Turnbow's Trap. Eleven and Hopper are trying to force an entrance through the wall. However, all their efforts are in vain. Frustrated by the situation, Hopper plunges a knife into the wall, but it gets stuck in the demonic flesh. The girl proposes a plan, but first she needs to eat to recharge her battery. She's interrupted by her partner, who approaches her to say that the battery was fully charged, and they didn't even scratch the wall, reminding her that they don't even know if Holly is on the other side since there's no trace or clue to follow. Eleven is persistent and asks Hopper for food again, so after looking at her with a bit of disappointment, he takes a small package of jerky out of his backpack and throws it to her. Eleven, seeing the package, throws it back and asks if there's nothing else. Hopper tells her he didn't pack anything else and that she should be grateful since he only brought enough food for a team of one. He recommends she try it since she might like it, so Eleven has no choice but to eat from the package. In the distance, an army caravan approaches the site with an antenna that completely disables the girl, leaving her in shock, so Hopper has to take care of her. Meanwhile, Will's mother tries to contact her son and Robin via walkie-talkie while driving down a road, explaining that she isn't upset and just wants to know they're okay. At that moment, she notices the two young men riding bicycles past her, so she brakes sharply. The two young men also stop when they see the car, and Robin asks Will if it's likely she saw them. Seeing the car stop, Will immediately replies that she did. The mother, absolutely furious, demands they come inside, berating Robin for disobeying her when she told her not to go anywhere unsafe and for cutting off all communication with her. Will interrupts, saying she can talk to him too, since he's not a baby. He explains that her plan wasn't functional, and she only liked it because it was safe, but he took his own risks by connecting to the hive mind and spying on Vecna. He discovered that Holly is just the beginning, and that Vecna plans to take more children. He doesn't yet understand why, but he explains that they have something they can use against them, their next move. He adds that they must leave because they need to stop Vecna, and they don't have much time. At Vecna's house, Holly is having breakfast. The kidnapper asks the girl if she's still thinking about her parents. She replies that she is, so Vecna tells her they're in the best possible hands, and that he was told they're improving with each passing hour. He explains to the girl that as soon as they're released, they'll come here. Holly replies that she knows, but she just wishes she could be with them. Vecna says he understands, but he can't offer them any comfort in Hawkins, since the only comfort they have is knowing she's here, safe with him, safe from the monsters. The young man tells the girl that maybe he'll make more waffles with chocolate chips tomorrow. As Holly asks who he's talking about, Henry replies that he's talking about Derek. The girl, confused, asks if Derek is coming, to which Henry asks if she doesn't like Derek very much. After a moment of silence, he asks if she wants him to let the monsters eat him, suggesting that she can tell Derek that if he misbehaves or hurts her in any way, he'll leave him to fight the monsters alone, cheering the girl up for a moment. Henry leaves the girl alone for the entire day, explaining that she shouldn't go into the forest because that's where the monsters are, and then leaves the place. Meanwhile, the army arrives at Eleven and Hopper's location. Some soldiers take a break, while another urinates against the wall. Eleven lies on the ground, being tended to by her companion due to her shock. Hopper approaches a gap and carefully observes the soldiers, careful not to reveal his position. However, one of them notices the knife stuck in the wall and orders the use of the antenna to pinpoint the locations of those still hidden. After firing multiple shots and killing several soldiers, Hopper disables the antenna that is confining Eleven. Once fully recovered, he eliminates the remaining soldiers. Robin calls a meeting with his friends to decide what to do to prevent Vecna's next attack. In a room completely isolated from society, Will explains to his friends that Vecna's son will be Derek, since he managed to see him. Being near the hive mind allows him to connect to it and to Vecna's mind. He can see who he's targeting, explaining that the first time it happened he saw what Holly saw, and adds that it happened again this morning, but this time it wasn't Holly, it was someone else, concluding that it was Derek Turnbow. Robin explains that Vecna is like a serial killer, stalking his victims, but he does it by invading their minds, and that's exactly what he did with Chrissy and Max. Mike takes the lead, proposing the ultimate plan to save Derek from Vecna's clutches. Someone with access to the house must enter and knock the family out with sleeping pills. Robin approves of this part of the plan, saying she knows where to get sleeping pills that can knock out even elephants. Mike adds that this part is crucial because if Vecna decides to spy, he'll think Derek is asleep and send a Demogorgon to capture him, but it won't find the boy. It will find them, and they'll be ready. They will ask Murray to give them traps. They will burn the demon, and he will run away with his master, but not before tracking him down, and hopefully, the demo will lead them to his lair, and thus they will find Holly too. Meanwhile, Holly is baking desserts while she's home alone, playing music and singing to liven things up, watching TV series, eating freshly baked desserts, and trying on various dresses. Suddenly, he hears the doorbell ring repeatedly. A little scared, he opens the door and sees no one, but when he opens the mailbox, he finds a letter in which someone has written under the name of Henry that he needs help and that he should meet him at the X on the map. Two of the boys approach Erica to try and convince her to apologize to Tina so they can carry out their plan to infiltrate Derek's house. Erica is initially reluctant because she has issues with Tina, Derek's sister, and tells them it's impossible. Mike, in a final attempt before she returns to class, tells her the plan is a bit crazy, but the goal isn't to save Derek, but to find Holly. He assures her that after everything is over, Tina will never come near her again. On the other hand, Robin and Will get the necessary sleeping pills at a hospital because Robin frequently visits it to visit his sweet granny Massey, who fell down the stairs and broke every bone in her body. But this is a lie, as he explains to Will that he only uses her name to visit Vicky. She tells him she knows it's unethical, but she always brings him cookies and believes Mrs. Massey loves her more than her entire family. With the sleeping pills in their possession, they can continue with their plan to save Derek. Murray arrives at the trap delivery site handing out acetone, a CPR figure of a child, shotgun shells, 3 packs of grenade-shaped water balloons as he felt it fit the matter, along with 900 meters of barbed wire. Henderson, despite Steve's pleas, decides to anchor the tracker that can be placed on any vehicle by making a hole in the roof of the car. Nancy and Jonathan are testing the transmitter and loading it into a shotgun shell. Murray interrupts them, asking what they're doing. Nancy responds with another question, asking what he thinks. Confused, Murray replies that it looks like they're loading a tracker into a shotgun shell, hoping to fire it at an interdimensional being. Nancy tells him that she said their transmitters were designed to withstand extreme conditions without damage. Murray clarifies that firing it at a beast with a shotgun isn't what he expected, as that would be lethal. He explained that if the heat from the gunpowder explosion doesn't destroy the transmitter, the recoil will. Nancy asked if this was a fact or a theory. After a brief silence, Murray told her it was a theory, so Nancy decided to test it. After firing it at a sack of potatoes and noticing the transmitter was in perfect condition, Nancy was pleased that everything was working perfectly. I decided to intimidate a soldier who had been kidnapped and gagged to get information about what he knew about the Wall of Flesh. The soldier refused to give any statements, so with no other option, Eleven decided to delve into the soldier's mind, noticing that he knew a doctor named key. She gave this information to Hopper so he could continue questioning him, but the soldier simply said he didn't know what she was talking about. Hopper replied that the girl they were looking for could see everything in his brain, so if he didn't give them answers, she would find them herself, and it would be best if he saved them some time. Hopper asked him for Dr. Key's location, but the soldier replied almost hesitantly that he didn't know. 11 tells Hop that there's a base on the other side on Gable Ridge Street. Feeling intimidated, the soldier starts saying that the doctor's mission is to find the monster, and 11. Following the soldier's memories, Hop finds a metal door. She practically shouts at him, asking what's behind it, but he doesn't know. 11, driven by curiosity, tries to break down the door but injures the soldier, causing him to faint. Hopper rushes to her friend, who tells her that behind the door is someone as powerful as she is, Vecna. Holly, after reflecting a bit at home, decides to cross the forest to help who she believes to be Henry. Erica arrives at Tina's house and tearfully apologizes for what happened before joining her parents and Derek for dinner. Erica brings a dessert with her, which she offers to each family member during the meal. With the plan in motion, everyone is prepared for what's about to happen. During dinner, Tina and Derek's father asks Erica if she changed the recipe, as it tastes slightly different. Erica, following her intuition to ensure everything goes smoothly, decides to tell them it's made with nutmeg, offering Tina some, but Tina refuses because she needs to watch her calories. While they argue about what happened with Josh, one by one the family members begin to fall asleep. The first is the father, who, feeling a little dizzy, decides to get up from the table but falls to the floor. The second is the mother, who, while helping her husband, also gets up and falls next to him. Tina, seeing this, gets worried and yells at Erica to call emergency services. Derek, laughing at what's happening, also falls asleep. Tina yells at Erica, telling her she told her to call emergency services, but Erica gets up and takes out a syringe, replying that she had told her to eat the pie, and sticks the needle in Tina's neck, making her fall asleep. The group enters the house and prepares the scene for the Demogorgon's arrival. Taking the sleeping bodies of the entire family with them, they arm themselves with axes, pickaxes, and any tool they can find to trap the demon. Will has a conversation with his mother in which she explains her concern for her son's life, saying that when she was about to lose him, she did nothing. Will tries to tell her it wasn't her fault, but the woman replies that all she wants is for her son to be okay. The Demogorgon enters Derek's room, but when he tries to take him, it encounters the CPR figure, so the group begins their attack. Lucas throws water balloons to attract its attention, and as it runs, the monster triggers a spike trap that lands directly on its chest. Sinclair flees, causing the demon to fall into a pit trap, and after a few blows to the head from Mike, the Demogorgon falls onto the barbed wire. Nancy shoots the transmitter, hitting it in the back, and Jonathan throws a flare, causing it to catch fire from the acetone spilled on the wire. The demon manages to escape, but Mike informs the group in the car that it crossed through the portal, so Henderson continues the plan, following the signal from the tracker. As they pursue it, they notice the signal redirecting to the southeast. Will notices Derek has woken up and Robin tries to cover his head while apologizing. However, Will says that Vecna has already noticed and knows where they are. Holly continues her search for the X on the map, but when she arrives, it's not Henry waiting for her, causing her to run away. While trying to hide behind some rocks, the person responsible for the letter appears, revealing itself to be Max. Joyce attempts to calm Derek, assuring him that they are only there to help him. However, he accuses her of being a child snatcher, to which she responds defensively. She introduces herself as Will's mother, a boy people call a zombie because he returned from the dead after being kidnapped by a creature. The truly dangerous thing is that this creature has returned, and now it is looking for Derek. He claims to know about it thanks to a Mr. K, but Joyce confesses that this man is actually the one manipulating the monsters. Hearing this, Derek promises to behave if they release him. As soon as he is free, he pushes everyone aside to try to escape, but Will stops him just in time. With no other option, Derek takes refuge in the attic and refuses to listen to any explanation. Just then, Will enters a momentary trance, sensing that a creature has located them. The beast pounds on the door with all its strength until it busts into the barn. Joyce decides to arm herself and confront the monster. She warns it that it can only advance if it kills her. Full of courage, Joyce forces the creature to retreat until, opportunely, the monster is hit by the trap driven by Dustin and the others who have just arrived. The monster decides to withdraw and uses a silo as a portal to return to the other dimension. Steve, witnessing the creature's retreat, proposes using the silo door to also enter and go after Holly. After a brief but intense discussion, the team accepts the plan, and thus we see them speeding into the portal until they cross to the other side. Meanwhile, back at the barn, and thanks to his connection with the creature, Will manages to visualize the location of his imprisoned friends in the other dimension. Moments later, he wakes up and is comforted by his mother, Joyce. On the other hand, the scene shifts to show that the military has arrived at the Miller's house to take their daughter Debbie along with other children, an event that is witnessed with concern by Lucas Lucas, and Mike. Back with Dustin and Steve's team, they pursue the creature as it moves into the vicinity of a cemetery. However, the beast begins to move faster, and they are losing the tracking signal, which ignites a loud argument within the group. The dispute unfortunately causes them to become distracted from the road, which results in them crashing loudly. In the barn, Joyce tries to communicate with the team without success, and since she doesn't plan on standing by idly, she accepts Robin and Will's proposal. Will shows her a mural of the place he saw during his connection, including the prisoners, and thanks to this they understand that Vecna is looking for a total of 12 children. Right at that moment, Mike and Lucas arrive at the barn to inform them that the military has just taken Debbie and other children from the area. Speaking of the uniformed personnel, General Orlando orders her subordinates to gather the children to use them as bait. She holds the belief that 11 is behind all the disappearances. A subordinate colonel points out to her that sacrificing children as bait is unethical, but the general makes it clear that they would only fail if the soldiers are incapable of protecting them in battle. On the other hand, the focus shifts to Max, who is taking care of Holly and trying to explain to her that she can be in this location even though she is also in the hospital in a coma. The girl shows Max a note that Henry wrote to her, asking for help. However, Max reveals to her that in reality that note was written by Max herself. Faced with this confession, Holly begins to distrust Max and even starts to believe she might be a monster, but Max quickly gains her confidence by recounting anecdotes they shared together in the past. Max shows Holly the house in the cave, explaining that they are in a memory, inside a memory world. Although the surroundings appear beautiful, it is actually a prison created by Henry. Later, the children are successfully transported to the military headquarters, where, unbeknownst to them, they are being observed by Will's team. Joyce discovers that a tunnel system runs right underneath the hangar where the children are staying. At that moment, Robin recalls the lake story and tells them the great escape tale. They can get the prisoners out by digging a tunnel starting from the bathroom. To execute this plan, they need someone to infiltrate and spot the children who have been marked by Vecna. Thus, they conclude that they must infiltrate Derek, which will be relatively easy since the army is already actively looking for him. Separately, we see Dimitri exiting the barracks alive. From another position, Hopper analyzes the number of guards, alerting that there are too many soldiers protecting Vecna. Faced with this, 11 proposes to infiltrate by jumping at the same speed as thunder to avoid drawing attention. Hopper rejects the idea. Right at that moment, they receive a call from Dustin, confirming that they are still alive and must now meet at the cemetery church since they have crossed to the other side. However, Hopper explicitly orders them not to try crossing the wall they crashed into, and furthermore he accepts the infiltration plan proposed by 11. Far from there, Max explains to Holly that although she died at Henry's hands, moments later she was able to wake up in that hospital where everyone was dead. However, that awakening was only a dream, as she had moved to the school in 1959 trapped within Henry's memories. Even though she tried to escape after passing through multiple and confusing mazes, she always ended up returning to the same place. Nevertheless, one day she heard her favorite song again, believing she could escape if she followed the melody, but everything just got worse. On another note, we see Derek presenting himself at the army barracks. They immediately take him into custody and join him with the group of other children. Once he gets to the bathroom, he contacts the team to give them the exact locations for the tunnel and to begin the recruitment of the marked children. On the other side, 11 begins to act. Through a great jump perfectly synchronized with the thunder, she successfully infiltrates, allowing Hopper to also enter for the operation. Back with Derek, he introduces himself to the other children as Vecna's messenger, stating that his mission is to recruit the marked children for the final judgment straight to paradise. Although most of them mock him for his speech, Debbie is the only one who understands and internalizes his words. Meanwhile, we see the rest of the team arriving at the entrance of one of the tunnels. During the process, when Mike hears about what happened with the creature in the barn, he suggests to Will that perhaps if he tried harder, he could control the creature for their benefit. In the other team, when Steve and Nancy propose to ignore Hopper's order and try to cross to the other side of the wall, Dustin arrives to warn them that he has just discovered the wall is a circle, and at the center of the entire phenomenon is the Hawkins lab. Max continues telling her story about how the music led her to the first memories she had with her, and the deeper she went, the more terrible memories she relived. However, the memories ended when she was finally killed, as she had found the exit in the middle of a hellish world from which she saw a portal to the hospital with Lucas, but when she tried to cross, the music stopped, allowing Henry to find her. Max, with no other option, ran non-stop to the cave, a place Henry refused to enter as he seemed afraid to proceed. But now that Holly had appeared, Max believes they can escape that mental world together. Meanwhile, down in the underground tunnels, Will and Robin have an intimate conversation about the music they love, moving them to tears until they finally reach the extraction point, right beneath the military base. In the lab, we see Dimitri managing to enter and simultaneously Hopper and 11 infiltrate. Since they cannot open the inner door, 11 is forced to use her powers to try to destroy it. However, they are discovered, which activates the defense system, sound waves to which Eleven is extremely sensitive. Back with the rescue team, once they manage to create an opening by picking upwards in the tunnel, they send the signal to Derek, who proceeds to send the children out one by one to be rescued. The children mistakenly believe the rescuers are Henry's soldiers. Right at that moment, the team realizes they damaged part of the piping during the excavation, which becomes a serious problem. In the tunnel, Mike and Will desperately try to control the water flow from the broken pipes while the children continue to exit. But in the middle of this chaos, an unrelated girl named Ashley notices the unusual moisture in the bathroom and reports it to the military personnel. With no options left, Derek and the rest of the children make a dash for the tunnel without discretion, forced into an emergency escape. In the lab, Dr. K finally finds Eleven unprotected, but Eleven warns her that all her men will die. And this is how we see Hopper tricking the soldiers to gun them down before they are gunned down themselves. Dimitri survives, initiating a hand-to-hand battle that, although he loses, allows Hopper to be captured by a creature. At this moment, Dr. K arrives and asks him why he risked Eleven's life by coming to this place, but Hopper refuses to speak despite being tortured. K shows him that while heat weakens the creature, cold, on the contrary, strengthens it, making the torture worse, but Hopper tells her to go to hell, refusing to give in. Simultaneously, Eleven finally gets up, but even though she tries to use her powers, her critical condition prevents it. Still, she tricks the doctor into getting close enough to stab her with a pair of scissors. Eleven only slightly wounds her, but the move allows Hopper to escape the creature. Through simple combat maneuvers, Hopper disarms and subdues the doctor. Even so, she reveals that her reinforcements are on the way, but Hopper doesn't care and knocks her out with a precise blow. Having done this, he orders Eleven to escape toward the woods, and right there, she discovers that Hopper has dynamite on his clothes, as he planned to sacrifice himself on the mission. She absolutely refuses to leave him behind, but Hopper only says goodbye, making it clear that he is very proud of who Eleven has become. She tries to follow him, but Hopper blocks the door. Once on the other side, we see him begin to remember the moments he lived with Eleven, as this gives him enough courage to continue advancing on his suicide mission. In the bathroom, when three soldiers arrive, Will and Mike can no longer hold out and finally give way, which allows the uniformed men to discover the tunnel. On the other side of the tunnel, once above ground, even though not all the children are present, the plan continues, transporting those who are present in the escape truck. Those captured by the army are taken to the colonel in charge, who is informed of the loss of 5 children. Joyce tries to explain to him that those children are in grave danger in that location, but the colonel alleges that the military is the safest place at the moment. In the middle of the discussion with the colonel, Will starts having another psychic connection, sensing that a creature is approaching quickly. Moments later, the barracks' electricity begins to fail, and a loud rumbling is heard beneath the ground. The colonel, in a panic, orders to neutralize anything approaching, but instantly, a portal opens beneath a metal plate, and the creature emerges, proceeding to dismember the soldiers mercilessly. They try to destroy it with direct gunfire, but just as they seem to be gaining control, a second creature appears and joins the massacre without delay. And the creatures are not the only problem. At the extraction point where the children are with Robin, they observe more portals opening, which means they will also be imminently attacked. Similarly, within the tunnels, another portal opens right in front of Lucas and the 2 children he is carrying. The escape truck speeds away, initiating the pursuit, while at the barracks, the colonel personally tries to stop one of the creatures with his high-caliber shotgun. Amidst this chaotic situation, the protagonist sees the distraction to move away from the soldiers. Mike guides the group, trying to dodge both bullets and the creatures. Fire, which weakens them, but since the creatures are psychically connected to Will, he also suffers the pain from the fire. Meanwhile, in the lab, the vibrations finally stop, and moments later, the door surprisingly opens, as Hopper allows Eleven to enter. Crossing to the other side, she finds her sister, who was imprisoned in the lab just as they suspected. At the same time, at the army barracks, in the heat of battle, one of the walls suddenly opens, giving way to Vecna himself. He executes all the guards in his path without resistance, including the soldier carrying the flamethrower. Then, he revitalizes his creatures so they get up and continue the pursuit of the children. This way they soon reach the truck. When Vecna finishes the massacre of the gods, he confronts Joyce, who fearlessly orders him to immediately stay away from her son. Vecna simply throws her far away with a flick of his hand, then turns to Will and tells him that he chose the children to remake the world because they are weak in body and mind, incapable of resisting him. All this happens while we see the mocked children being captured one by his creatures and taken to his world. He also reveals to Will that he was the first mocked child, and it was because his will broke so easily that Vecna was able to understand what was possible. He realized that some minds don't belong to the real world, but to his own world. In that instant, as Vecna leaves the scene, Will reconnects with the creatures, which immediately return to attack his friends. However, his last-second memories of his loved ones allow him to take control of himself and the creatures, preventing them from harming his friends. To ensure the protection of his loved ones, he proceeds to execute all the monsters under his control.